और दूसरी जानिब दुनिया भर के दीगर ममालिक में भी मौजूदा सूरत हाल पर तशवीश पाई जाती है और ईरान और इसराइल के दरमियान जारी इस कशीदगी को कम करने पर गौर किया जा रहा है। अमरीका के सदर डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने सऊदी वली अहद मोहम्मद बिन सलमान से टेलीफोनिक बातचीत की है। इसराइली मीडिया के मुताबिक ईरान और इसराइल के दरमियान तनाव ख़त्म करने और बातचीत से मसला हल करने पर इत्तफाक किया गया है। इस वक्त आपको दिखा रहे हैं सलामती कौंसिल में इसराइली सफ़ीर गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं।
Ghulam Ali Rashid, commander of Emergency Command. These men directed Iran's conventional military forces and terror forces. They coordinated the terror network that has plagued our region for decades. Seeing how many meetings you had here about the proxies of Iran in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza. Second, we struck Iran's military infrastructure, specifically the surface-to-surface missile array. Israeli Air Force fighter jets, guided by precise intelligence, completed a series of strikes against the Iranian regime's missile capabilities. Dozens of launchers, missile storage facilities, and additional military sites were destroyed. Late last year, Iran launched wave after wave of ballistic missiles at our cities. They deliberately targeted civilians. The destruction of these missile systems is a moral imperative. These are weapons with the capacity to reach thousands of kilometers. Leaving them in the hands of a radical regime, one that openly dreamed of wiping our nation off the map, was not an option. We will not hesitate. We will not relent. And we will not allow a genocidal regime to endanger our people. Third, we struck the core of the nuclear program, the underground enrichment facilities at Natanz. This facility was operating at a military-grade capacity. Intelligence confirmed that within days, Iran could have produced enough material for multiple bombs. We targeted the heart of that effort. Madam President, this operation was carried out because the alternative was unthinkable. How long did the world expect us to wait? How long? Let's speak about it. Until they assembled the bomb? Until they mounted it on a Shahab missile? Until it was en route to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, like the more than 100 missiles that they sent an hour ago? How long should we wait? And if anyone in this chamber still believes Iran would never use such a weapon, I invite you to remember October 7. On that day, we saw what Iran's proxy Hamas was capable of. And then in Gaza, they did it with Kalashnikovs, with grenades. They butchered families, they burned children alive, they mutilated women. Imagine what the head of the snake would do with a nuclear warhead. To that end, we uncovered intelligence revealing a multi-front plan directed by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas for a future assault on Israel. This one would be far more sophisticated than October 7. It envisioned mass missile launches, first from Iran, then from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, followed by coordinated infiltrations of our borders. The plan was not aspirational. It was operational, and it was nearing execution. This council has convened countless times in recent months. You have passed resolutions, called for restraint, demanded ceasefire, You met in emergency sessions when Hamas was under threat, but when Iran marched toward nuclear capability, you said nothing. When they crossed line after line, you drew none of your own. So we acted. We acted to ensure our people alive. We acted so that Jewish children in Jerusalem will not wake up to the sound of air raid sirens triggered by a nuclear launch. We acted so that Iranian missiles will not carry radioactive payloads into civilian neighborhoods. We acted because history has taught us that silence is complicity and hesitation is fatal. We acted because 80 years ago, the Jewish people made a promise to ourselves: never again. That promise applies to a nuclear holocaust as well. This was an act of national preservation. It was one we undertook alone, not because we wanted to, but because we were left no other option. We now turn to this Council, not for permission, but for recognition. Recognition that Israel did what the world should have done. Recognition that the Iranian regime violated every obligation they ever undertook. Recognition that Israel had the undeniable right and duty to defend its people from extermination. We urge the Council to condemn Iran's nuclear violations. We urge the Council to finally acknowledge the existential threat Iran poses to the world. We urge the Council to join us in our commitment to prevent their genocidal dreams from becoming a reality. But we also expect something even more basic: moral clarity. Stop equating aggressors with defenders. Stop treating a genocidal regime and a democracy under siege as two sides of the same coin. The Iranian regime was preparing for war. This war would have stretched across the Middle East, to Europe, to Asia, to the Americas. It would have been against the international order. We acted to prevent a threat that would endanger not only Israel, but the entire world. We will not sit quietly while our people are targeted. Not again, not ever. Empty words will not stop Iran. Israel will. We did not wait for the bomb to fall, and we will never allow that day to come. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Israel for his statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of Iraq.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for responding to our request and convening this session. I'd like to thank the USG and the Director General of the IEA for their briefings. Madam President, Iraq expresses its deep concern and condemnation of the dangerous military aggression committed by the Israeli entity against the territories of the Islamic Republic of Iran, including their blatant violation of Iraq's sovereignty and the inviolability of its airspace. This constitutes a flagrant breach of the provisions of international law and the UN Charter. In this regard, the Republic of Iraq has submitted a formal letter of complaint to Your Excellency, President of the Security Council. We clarified the details of the said violations, which is not only an infringement on the inviolability and sovereignty of Iraq, but is also an illegitimate use and transgression on the airspace of another sovereign state to initiate acts of aggression against another UN member state. This exposes the entire region to huge security risks. This unacceptable and illegal aerial breach jeopardizes Iraq's security and stability. It's also a dangerous violation of our territorial integrity and our airspace. It pushes us into conflicts that we are not party to and are far from. It threatens regional and international peace and security. Iraq categorically rejects any attempt at turning our territories or airspace into a theater to settle regional or international accounts. We stress that we will not permit our national security or sovereignty to be at risk. We will not allow such violations to be repeated under any pretexts. Madam President, the government of the Republic of Iraq underlines that this aggression is also a violation of relevant Security Council resolutions and a violation of the sovereignty of a UN member state. This necessitates a clear position from the international community to ensure serious accountability. The Israeli entity is fully responsible for this escalation and for the repercussions of this violation of the security of Iraq and that of the entire region. Accordingly, the government of Iraq calls on the Council to, first, condemn this flagrant violation of Iraqi sovereignty and considering it a clear breach of the principles of the UN Charter and the rules of international law. Second, hold the Israeli entity fully responsible legally and politically for these acts of aggression. Third, take the necessary measures to stop these violations and prevent their repetition as they put Iraq's security and stability at risk. Madam President, this aggression highlights once again the need for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and maintain international peace and security. It must take a clear position vis-à-vis such repeated violations by the Israeli entity, whether against the Palestinian people or against a neighboring country in the region, all with impunity in a way that threatens the credibility of the international law at large. It will only exacerbate tension and instability in the region, which might lead to grave consequences. In conclusion, Madam President, the Republic of Iraq reiterates that it is fully committed to the principles of good neighborliness, non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries, and respect of international law. We reserve our right to take any necessary measures to protect our national security and sovereignty in line with the Charter and the rules of international law. Iraq calls on this august Council to guarantee respect of state sovereignty and independence pursuant to the principles and purposes of the United Nations. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank the representative of Iraq for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, thank you, Madam President. Distinguished members of the Council, at the outset, allow me to thank Madam De Carlo and Mr. Grossi for their two valuable briefings. We address you today on behalf of the member states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, namely the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the Sultanate of Oman, and my country, the State of Kuwait. The GCC condemns the attacks by Israel since early this morning against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its attacks against Iranian territory. We express our concern towards this serious escalation that warns of serious and dire consequences for the regional security and stability. These acts of aggression that come at a delicate moment when the Middle East is witnessing increased level of tensions are a blatant violation against the sovereignty of a UN member state, and they represent a serious precedent that undermines the basis upon which the international law is built, and in particular the principle of the respect for state sovereignty and the non-use or threat of use of force against any state. Madam President, the timing of this attack is very sensitive when international efforts were intensifying to resume nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States. This attack will likely derail the diplomatic efforts and risks a wider conflict that will seriously affect regional and international security. In this context, the GCC affirms that such attacks, regardless of the justification, will only lead to deeper polarization and an expanded conflict, and they pave the way for a regional trajectory that is dangerous and that will not serve the interests of any population in the region. We also emphasize that security in the region cannot be achieved through escalation and bombardment, but through dialogue and political and diplomatic means, and through promotion of good neighborliness and mutual respect. The GCC group will continue the efforts aimed at de-escalation and to advance dialogue and diplomacy. We reiterate our commitment to working with the concerned parties for the sake of peaceful and lasting resolutions that guarantee peace and security in the region. We also call in this context for the greatest degree of restraint and wisdom and to avoid an expanded conflict. The international community, and in particular the UN Security Council, must uphold their responsibility in ending these violations. In conclusion, the GCC reiterates its firm commitment to support peace and security and stability in the region, and we categorically reject the violation of any state sovereignty under any pretext, and we warn against an expanded conflict that will only serve the forces of chaos and extremism. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. I now invite council members to informal consultations to continue our discussion on the subject. The meeting is adjourned.
अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा की सलामती कौंसिल का ये हंगामी इजलास जो कि मौजूदा सूरत हाल के तनाजुर में शुरू हुआ था, अब इसे बेनतीजा ख़त्म होने का अनाउंस किया गया है। मशरक़ वस्ता में कशीदगी कम करने पर गुफ्तगू की गई और मुख्तलिफ मेंबरान की जानिब से मौजूदा सूरत हाल में मशरक़ वस्ता में कशीदगी को कम करने पर और ख़ास तौर पर यह गुफ्तगू की गई है कि इसराइल की जानिब से ईरान पर हमला ऐसे वक्त में किया जाना बाइस तशवीश है जब ईरान और अमेरिका के दरमियान मुज़ाकरात जारी थे और अगला दौर होने वाला था। और साथ ही साथ ये भी आपको बताएं कि सलामती कौंसिल के इस इजलास में इसराइली सफ़ीर ने खिताब किया, कहा कि ईरान ने इसराइली शहरी इलाकों में लगातार मिसाइल हमले किए हैं, हम ईरान को अपने लोगों की ज़िंदगियाँ ख़तरे में डालने की इजाज़त नहीं देंगे। उन्होंने कहा कि हमारे पास इंटेलिजेंस मालूमात थी कि ईरान की यूरेनियम अफजोदगी में तेज़ी से इजाफा हुआ है और ईरान कुछ ही वक्त में मल्टीपल एटमी बम बनाने की पोजीशन में है। उन्होंने कहा कि हम खित्ते में ये ख़तरा अलाउ नहीं करेंगे। ईरान मुसलसल लाइन क्रॉस कर रहा था, इसलिए हमने हमला किया। हम कौंसिल से मुतालबा करते हैं कि ईरान को रोकने में किरदार अदा करे। उन्होंने कहा कि हमने हमला किया क्योंकि ईरान खित्ते के लिए एक थ्रेट है। हम इंतज़ार नहीं करेंगे, हम अमल करेंगे।